Can you imagine waking up one morning to find out your rent's going to increase by 23.5%? Now, I know that sounds outrageous, but for some tenants in British Columbia, this is becoming a reality. My name's Miles Noack of the Noack Mortgage Team, powered by Indy Mortgage, and today we're going to take a dive into a real-life scenario where landlords were given the ability to increase the rent by over 20% over the course of 2 years. Now, before we get into this, do me a favor. If you find content like this interesting, hit that like and subscribe button so more people like you can see this video, and let's dive into it. Now, before we get too deep into these mass increases of the cost of rent that these tenants are going to be facing, let's talk some more detail on what's normal, as this is definitely not. When we talk about rental increases, typically depending on where you live, so what municipality you're in, what province you're in, and what time of the day it is. I'm just kidding, time of the day doesn't matter, but generally speaking, it'll change annually. You will see rental increases be approved between, let's say, 2 to 3.5%. That's what would be considered normal. And these rental increases are meant to offset increasing costs of owning a home, such as property insurance, property taxes, maintenance, and all these other different scenarios. And what's happened with this is a set of landlords have been given the ability to increase their rent by something substantially more than that allowable 2 to 3.5%. And that equaled out to 23.5% over the course of 2 years. Now, how is this going to roll out? They're essentially going to have the ability to increase the rent by 12% 1 year and then by 11.5% the following year. And when we think about this, we want to look at it objectively. Why did this happen? How did it happen? And is it going to happen again for other landlords and tenants? And in order to do that, we want to look at what's driving these increases, what's driving the cost of rent up. And for any landlord that bought a rental property in the last couple of years on a variable rate mortgage with an adjustable payment, I can almost guarantee you the driving factor is the prime rate of Canada. As mentioned, the cost of living is increasing, and that's not just for tenants, that's for landlords as well. We all have to buy the same groceries, we all have to pay for the same gas. However, when you own a home, you have some additional costs to you. For example, you have to insure that property for replacement or fire. You have to make sure that that property is livable, maintaining it. So let's say the roof has an issue, you replace the roof. Let's say the fridge breaks, you replace the fridge. For example, if you're a tenant, generally speaking, if an appliance breaks, your first phone call is the landlord. When you are a landlord or a homeowner, your first call is the appliance repair store, if not the appliance store in general. Because you can't phone someone to come in and get someone to come fix it. You just have to eat that cost yourself and maintain it. That's the price of owning a home. Now, in these sort of scenarios, that's why we have the ability to increase rent by 2 to 3.5%. That is why that's there. Now, what's not normal and what's created the opportunity for this to happen is the fact that we've seen interest rates go up so substantially over the course of the last couple of years. And what I'm suspecting happened here, and I don't know these landlords personally, I don't know the tenants personally, all I know is from what I've read online and from different news articles and things like that. And I'm going to try and portray this in a way where I'm being objective and neutral between both parties, because that's where I need to sit with this. We're going to start with the general relationship between a landlord and a tenant. The relationship between a landlord and tenant is, I'm using my money to buy this investment, I'm going to give you a place to live, you're going to pay me. And the tenant is, I can't afford to buy a house right now, I'm going to pay you monthly to live here, and you're going to provide me something that's safe and livable. And for the last couple of years, these two have been butting heads like crazy. As the costs of living increase, as the cost of home ownership increase, that drives up the cost of rent, and it just puts a lot of pressure on both parties to a point where now we're seeing not just tenants go to the RTB about complaints, but landlords as well to get exceptions on the rules so that they can maintain the property. And that's exactly what's happened here. We've got a set of landlords who approached their tenants and said, we can't afford to keep this home. We can't afford to keep this. And it's a fourplex, by the way. There's 4 families in here. We need to increase your rent so that we can keep this property, which the tenants, of course, said no, because they don't want to make extra payments. They're probably already paying enough that they're at a point where it could be difficult. And if you tack on an extra couple $100 per month, well, that makes things even harder for them. Now, what this landlord has done is gone to the RTB, explained and presented their case, and the RTB has said, yes, you can increase the rent. And we're not going to dive deep into how that's going to roll out. We already touched on that. But when you look at it, the fact that this landlord went to the RTB and the RTB said yes, that's wild to me. That is absolutely wild. And the reason I think this is crazy is the fact that it really shows exactly where we are with the tenant and landlord relationship and where we are with our economy, because both parties are struggling. Let's not kid ourselves. And I mean, I know there's good landlords and bad landlords. There's good tenants and bad tenants. But at the end of the day, we're all people, and you're creating a partnership. You're going to pay me money per month so I can own this property. I'm going to give you a property to live in. That is a partnership. And we've gotten to a point where this partnership has devolved to a point where essentially your course of action is either arguing, telling each other you're either greedy or lazy, or going to the RTP to get exceptions on rules or to make sure that landlords follow the rules. Like, really? You can't just figure this out yourselves? Come on, have a conversation. That landlord should have sat down with that tenant and said, hey, listen, here's my numbers. Here's where I am at. And that tenant should have been able to look at them and say, hey, listen, we get it. You're struggling. You made this investment. And I will give these landlords the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to here. And the reason for that is I believe they deserve it. When they bought this property, if you look at what was said by the Bank of Canada, and I'm not kidding, this is said, inflation's not a problem. It's a blip. Rates are going to stay low. Make those big purchases and investments. That's exactly what they did. They followed what the Bank of Canada was basically saying was going to happen. And guess what? The opposite happened. And I know when someone makes an investment, it's their decision. It's not the responsibility of the tenant. Like, you don't invest in the stock market, see a stock go down and phone the company that you invest in saying, hey, your stock dropped, so can you please just give me all my money back? It doesn't work that way. For better or for worse, you bought that stock. But if we look at owning a rental property as an investment, which it really is, as investments cost you money, if there is not a trajectory to alleviate that, and it's going to just continue costing you money down the line, what would you generally do with that investment? You would offload it. Now, the difference between this investment and a stock is that this investment involves not only the landlord's life, but the tenant's life as well. If all of a sudden this landlord can't afford the property and something happens, they got to sell it or whatever happens, and these tenants are displaced, that means they have to find a new home. That means they have to go out looking at different rental properties. And if it's a family, is it close to the school my kids go to? Is it close to the amenities I need? Is it affordable? Is the property going to have enough space for me and my family? All these different scenarios. And that's where I firmly believe that this is a partnership that has soured, that could be so much more beneficial to everyone involved if both parties would come to the table with a sense of understanding of each other's circumstance. Now, there is the argument to be said that, okay, you've got a landlord who's got a property, there's no mortgage on it, it's completely paid off, and they're renting it and increasing the rent by, let's say, 2% per year. Well, that's to counterbalance the cost of owning that home. And those costs of owning that home, if you don't rent it, are your costs. If you go from renting to buying a property, you're going to have these same costs to you, right? So at the end of the day, I think it needs to be a greater discussion. And I'm not claiming to have a fix here. I don't think anyone has a fix here. Just like any issue with any relationship, it can only be fixed by conversation, by dialogue and discussing these sort of things, where you can get yourself in a position where you're no longer talking from spaces of hate and anger and frustration, but understanding and acceptance. Once you get to that place, that's when I think we can see some amazing things happen. Because right now, the relationship between tenant and landlord is complete garbage. It is a terrible, toxic relationship from what I can tell online. I mean, you look on Facebook Marketplace at people trying to rent places, and it's terrible. Speaking from experience, I have a customer, they had a rental property, they received death threats via email because of the amount they were charging for rent, which was, and I quote, 10% less than the market rent for that property. They had an appraisal to confirm it. That's how crazy this stuff has gotten. So I think that, was this necessary? Yes. Did it need to go to the RTB? Apparently, yes. But I find it sad that that's the state we're in. Because at the end of the day, a landlord is providing a service and the tenant is paying for that service. And if all of a sudden these relationships get super sour and we get to a position where no one wants to buy rental properties in Canada, where are you going to rent from? It's a real serious question. Now, I want to know what you think about this. Do me a solid, post your thoughts on this in the comments below. Do you think this is something that's normal? Do you think it should be made normal? Do you think it was right? Do you think it was wrong? The one thing I ask, do me that huge favor, make sure your comments are kind, considerate, and respectful to others. I understand there's a lot of heat behind this debate, but there's no need to be, I don't know how to word it. There's no need to be crappy to each other. Be friendly, be kind, be considerate, and most of all, be loving. Once again, my name is Miles Noack of the Noack Mortgage Team, powered by Indy Mortgage. If you got any value out of this video, consider liking and subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.